What's your I finally met my online friend horror story? Not a horror story, but definitely weird. At 13 years old, I went to a show where my male online friend was also supposed to go. Not a big show and I was with my father. Don't worry, we were supposed to meet at one of the entrances, but he never showed up. When I asked him about it later, he said he must have been at the wrong entrance. Over time we stopped talking for no reason really. A few years later, one of our mutual online friend told me she learned that the guy in question was actually a girl. I don't care about the gender. The thing is that she wasn't the one on any of the pictures she sent to us and our other friends, and her name wasn't her real name. She totally invented another identity. The worst part is that another of our friend even told us she got pregnant from him. I don't know if she asked her to fake a pregnancy, or if it was her own idea, but that was really weird. Wonder what other thing she lied to us about. All three friends were the same person. I used to play a war game and I was friends with this other person, was a guy, and we became good friends and talked and all. Then out of the blue he asked me to be his girlfriend. He was a truck driver in the USA and I was only 12. It freaked me out a lot and I ghosted him. It was a terrifying experience and a real eye-opener for me. I used to play WoW with my now ex. Our guild leader actually wound up moving to our state with his wife. My ex and I broke up before we got the chance to hang out with the guy, and right after the breakup he messaged my ex essentially asking if it was cool if he and his wife got me drunk and took advantage of me. Ex showed me screenshots when I was getting my stuff from his place and I cancelled my plans to meet the guy and his wife. My ex had been physically abusive and broke up with me to date the girl he'd cheated on me with. I tried leaving before but he'd fake suicide attempts and I was so scared he'd go through with it so I stayed. Even though he was in a new relationship he tried to keep tabs on me and control me, but I saw it as my chance to escape. I happened to move right after we split and he didn't know my new address. I blocked him on everything. Somehow he kept getting information on me though. Turns out the guild leader was feeding him everything. I hadn't deleted the guy off Facebook cause I figured he was only a problem in person. When I confronted him over Messenger, bringing up the abuse, and the guy said, he said he choked you because you guys were arguing and he was afraid he wouldn't get the chance to speak. He still loves you. Side note, the choking was cause I was defending myself against accusations of cheating, which I hadn't done. Dang girl, lucky you got out of there. Strangling often leads to homicide and domestic violence. I don't know if it's a horror story, but it's how I ended up where I live now. I played WoW for years with a pretty regular group, got to know them offline and at one point two of them, a couple, invited me to move across the country. At the time I didn't have anything tying me to where I was, so I packed up and moved. Got out here, moved in with my friends and everything seemed okay. My buddy was a long haul driver so he was always gone for days at a time. His girl would try to set me up multiple times with two of her friends at the same time, one in Minnesota. I ended up having a hard time finding work for a while. Finally got a job though and was putting some money away while helping watch their kids. Out of nowhere one day my buddy accuses me of trying to fool around with his girl. Nothing had ever happened, but I had noticed her spending more and more time in my room when he wasn't there. I knew his history and his previous relationship had ended after she cheated with a friend of his. He wouldn't listen, so I got kicked out without any warning and they stole about $1K worth of my stuff and later moved. Ultimately it all worked out for me. Cut the friend and his girl out of my life completely and moved on. Now I have a good job here, wife and kids. We were friends online for years. We'd meet up every so often and when we started families we'd meet up and take the kids to the zoos or whatever. She wanted us to go on a cruise together, with our husbands and kids. I made the comment towards the effect of we can't afford that, and she went nuts. We shouldn't have had kids if we can't afford them. We shouldn't have more children. Our life sucks blah 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 because I didn't want to go on a goddamn cruise with her and her bratty ass kid. Sounds like a nightmare. I love how we can't afford a cruise turned into you can't afford your whole life, you irresponsible pleb. I was on Meet Me, met this guy who was super cool. We ended up texting every single day and I took the train out to Los Angeles to meet him. When I got there, he was being kinda shitty and he told me that he hadn't gotten much sleep because he was partying until 5 AM. We walked to his house and when I walked into his room, I was kind of shocked. It was a 8x6.5 room. All he had was a mat on the floor and a small little jewelry box full of mementos on top of his suitcase of clothes. We took a nap together. Later, we went to get ramen and he asked me to pay. I didn't mind. We went back to his place and we listened to music while we waited to go to a party. Fast forward to that night. We met up with some of his friends and they were so mean to him. They kept roasting him and picking on him and he was visibly getting upset. I stopped him for a bit so his friends could walk ahead of us. I reminded him that it was all fun and games and to ignore them. Ended up at the party and lots of people knew him. I sat out in the patio with a few cool people that I had just met while I waited for my friend to come back from saying hello to everyone inside. He never did. I was outside in the patio with these strangers for about 3 hours. People kept coming up to me and asking if I was alright. IDK if I looked sad or if I just looked like a plain loner. I went to find him and it was so packed. Didn't see him so I walked back. I seen his roommate and asked him to please tell my friend that I was gonna go get a motel. He went to tell him, came back and said my friend was being a dong and he would walk me back to the house instead so I didn't have to spend money on a hotel. We got to the house and I thanked him for walking all the way back home. I really appreciated it as my friend was probs inside doing coke or freaking girls. I went to bed in my friend's room and he woke me up in the middle of the night kissing me, trying to get his freak on. I simply said no. I'm not interested in having sex. His exact words were, "Are you serious? What was the point of you coming here? You're such a waste of time." My feelings were really hurt. I went back to sleep, woke up and left. Never wrote him after that. He had texted me a month later asking to borrow $50. I simply ignored the message and moved on. Sounds like a real piece of crap. I was the horror in this story. I was part of an online writing community that I really enjoyed and I made a lot of good friends through the years. One man and his wife were visiting from another country so another guy from my area and I were going to take them to dinner and have a nice in-person evening with sightseeing and conversation. Things kind of blew up for me at that time. My now ex-husband and I were having major issues and I was near my mental and emotional breaking point. I had lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks just from pure stress. On top of that, my family had chosen that evening to have a get together for my uncle who would soon be traveling to undergo surgery for cancer. I showed up in body, but that was basically it. My mind was a million miles away. I wasn't talkative at all, and I left after about an hour. I feel like I lost 3 good friends that evening because of my behavior at dinner and my subsequent withdrawal from the whole community. I'm sure they look back on that evening and think what a nightmare host I was. I met a really cool group of people from a chat group website called that lives in minimal distance away from me, like maybe 15 minutes, and the horror story part is that I was in my emo phase and probably made a great lasting impact on their lives. As a hot topic connoisseur, that was the crap. I was part of a Club Penguin army and somehow ended up on a weird chat that I got PM'd for foot pics. I, 25, was best friends with a woman, 46, for nearly 6 years. We would talk for hours and send each other gifts constantly. We shared everything from art to personal trauma. We were very close. When I fell in hard times, she was very kind and offered to take me in. I was so grateful that she would do this for me. After a few months, things started to change. I started to see why she was such a lonely person. She was mean, if not cruel, to anyone who ever disagreed with her or even had a different opinion. She was so mentally unstable that she couldn't even buy something without having to call her elderly mother and ask for permission. I found out that she was scamming the disability services to get money from the government because she didn't want her mother tracking her spending. She was so horrible to her caregiver. I'll admit that the guy was a complete moron, but he was still a sweet guy that was just trying to help. She was so abusive towards him that I had to step in on multiple occasions, which she freaking hated because it meant I wasn't on her side. But that's when she turned on me. She began to freak out over small stuff, screaming and crying because I missed a spot while mopping or because I spilled a little bit of water in the kitchen or ate my food too fast. She was freaking insane. As soon as I realized how messed up and unstable she was, after being screamed at and chased back to my room, I told her that I was going to be moving out as soon as possible. So, for the next week, she decided to make my life a living heck. She would scream about me to other people on the phone, telling lies about me, saying I did things I never did. And because she was a YouTuber with a big following, she doxed me on social media, telling people I punched holes in her walls and keyed her car. She even called the cops and tried to get me arrested for things I didn't do. Her followers began to harass me, sending me death threats. Then she started posting and sharing all of my personal secrets that I had shared with her in confidence. I ended up having to call my family to come get me because she was wanting to keep my dog so that I would have to keep in contact with her and I was no longer feeling safe. So, after 6 months of living in heck and 3 years of internet harassment and stalking that followed, I'll never meet someone I met online ever again. I have no interest in online friends. It's not safe because you never know how absolutely fricked up someone is until it's too late. Please, I just wanna know who this is. He was driving cross country with a friend. I said I had a couch floor they could crash on if needed. He was great. She was an annoying bee. She hated everything, was annoyed by my cat, didn't like anything I had to eat or drink, etc. They were literally there for like 16 hours. Back in about 1998, I met someone playing an online word game. We were both 16-year-old girls and we just hit it off and became very close. Finally in 2004 she was passing though where I live, so I invited her to stay for a few days. She shows up totally coked up. Then she invites some guy over and they were snorting cocaine off her car key in my living room. I didn't know she used coke and I was so uncomfortable the entire time. It was like having a stranger there, yet we knew everything about each other. We remained in touch and I still really like her, but it was just such an awkward visit. We haven't seen each other since, though. It's not a horror story, it's a story about how I was put off meeting people from the internet. I was friends with a bunch of people I met through an online game. After about 2 years, I decided to meet 2 of them. The 2 I was meeting were a long distance couple, one from one country and the other from mine. They had met many times and had spent 2 weeks together prior to meeting with me. We met in the city, said hi and hugged and did some touristy stuff, took their pictures etc etc. But throughout the whole time, they weren't really talking to me. At first, I put it down to anxiety as I was nervous too. But even after lunch, they were only talking to each other and I felt left out. I even took a sneaky video of them talking to each other and sent it to a friend, who agreed it was odd. When it was time for me to leave, I told them I had to go but I had a nice time, and they continued to chat to each other. I said it again but no response, so I started to walk away, until one of them said oh bye. I was really hurt. It was like they didn't want me to be with them. I had spent a lot of money getting down, especially since at the time I didn't have a job. When I got back, I stopped talking to them. The friend who I sent the video to sent a message to them asking why they were ignoring me, and they tried to turn it on me saying that I was the quiet one and that I was being rude to them, especially leaving without saying goodbye. I blocked them all on the game. A few months go by and one of them finds my social media and tries to reconnect. Starts off well, and then goes back to blaming me. Haven't met anyone from the internet since. Plot twist. OP is a ghost that can only communicate through manipulating electrical signals. That is, computers. Long story short, when I was doing a lot of online dating I had multiple accounts across multiple platforms. One happened to be FetLife. I used pictures there that I hadn't put online before, with my face cropped out. It didn't pan out however. I didn't really like any of the guys that messaged me. I was polite to them all but ultimately kind of abandoned my profile. Cue Tinder. I match with a guy that looks white collar, tailored, professional. Just my type. We match, talk for a week or so until we decide to get drinks. I get to the bar, took an Uber there, and look around. Don't see him. Until this scraggly looking guy comes up to me and says oh hey Grenadinigan. I thought you'd never make it now. I'm not unusually one to judge by appearances. We all have rough days and Lord knows I don't wear makeup or do my hair on the busiest of them. But his hair was significantly longer. Think short, well manicured hair versus mid back length uncombed waves. He was covered in a patchy beard and dressed really badly. I honestly didn't recognize him, and he waved it off with sorry. Those pictures are kind of old. Red flag stupidly ignored. We grab a small table with huge chair and start drinking and talking. One drink, just to be polite, but I'm turned off at this point wholly. Then, the kicker. He leans in toward me, puts his hand on my thigh, and says, You know, after you didn't message me back on FetLife, I'm surprised we matched on Tinder. You really are quite beautiful. At this point I'm like, I'm sorry? He chuckles. Literally chuckles like a villain in a movie, pats my thigh, and says I'm going to the bathroom. You should look at your profile and figure it out. I found you because your body is quite distinct. It's worth noting we live in a major international tourist city. There are thousands upon thousands of new people here every day, especially on Tinder. This is not a small town. I used to match with people that would swipe between connecting flights, so I'm beyond nervous. Watch him get up and go, and I quickly check my FetLife inbox and lo and behold, he had messaged me months ago. His profile picture looked like an absolute serial killer. I remember why I rejected him. Incompatible on all fronts, and I was polite. So anyways, I got to use the whole angel shot protocol, in which I basically ran to the bartender, explained the situation, and left through the back door. I was beyond uncomfortable and deleted all of my social media for a few months, and I consider myself lucky that he only sent a few your WhatsApp messages for the rest of the evening but gave up after that, and I paid for my own drink, too. I'm not a monster. You have been outsmarty boo the smart doggo for intelligence. Subscribe to AskReddit to gain +3 Ys from doggo of intelligence. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.